Welcome on in, guys. Welcome on in. So, we just finished up our Furiosa review. And yeah, this is going to be a bit of a unique one for Inside Out 2 because I just watched the movie last night. Mr. Austin has not seen the movie. And he asked me if I would recommend it to him. I told him to actually, it's okay, give a pass on it because he wasn't a big fan of the first movie, and it doesn't specifically do anything different than the first movie.
To be clear, I never saw the first movie.
Oh shoot!
I wasn't interested in seeing it, and so I was asking him if this movie was good enough to justify like watching the first movie and then seeing this one because the story was good enough and it justified that type of viewing. And so I to this day I've not seen the original Inside Out, but I'm
I
curious to see
actually
what he
missed
thinks
that.
about
I
this
missed that. I
movie.
thought you had watched the first one.
Nope,
So
I've
yeah,
seen clips
maybe
of
give
it,
the
but I
first
haven't
one a
watched the
shot.
movie.
Okay.
Okay.
I actually did wind up enjoying the first movie. And I was looking forward to this one. I think it's fascinating that they're tackling the human mind and emotions, and I think it's executed in an interesting way. That said, what I'm going to say about this movie doesn't particularly spoil the last one. Outside of, it's in some ways a repeat of the first movie in that there's a primary emotion and group of emotions that's struggling with new emotions and them fitting in together. Now, I did really wind up liking Mia Hawke's performance as the emotion anxiety. I thought it was very well done. The other emotions were nice, but they didn't really get very much time to shine at all, unfortunately. But things that I liked, yes, Mia Hawke's performance, the character was interesting. It was smart for them to choose that this is Riley's going through puberty, and so this brings about new changes in emotions, and they really the main struggle, the main conflict of the film is her sense of what was it? Since not sense of self, they were calling it her. Oh man, I don't know why I'm forgetting it at this moment.
Is it like a sense of belonging or something like that?
No, it's her belief system. So before, in the previous movie, she didn't have a belief system in particular, maybe because she was a kid and so she's kind of just run by emotions possibly. But in this movie they show that there's an actual conjoining of all of of different memories and emotions, well, memories connected to different emotions that converge together to form her belief system. And it primarily is that she finds herself as a good person in this film, but when puberty happens, anxiety throws it out and tries to form a new belief system for Riley. So it's actually pretty fascinating what they're the concepts that they're trying to personify, that they actually personify, and how they wind up executing it. But in but this one, so let's see. Animation has gotten better. The character models have gotten better. I do like seeing how in the original character designs the characters didn't have like hard outlines, and they sort of had a continuously like wavering moving kind of like dot pattern that makes up the texture of them. You could see that
Mm.
more clearly in this movie, so it's actually a nice design choice that we hadn't seen before, but it's also kind of maybe a bit of a flex of their technological prowess, similar to how Elemental, it was like the characters were made of fire and water and actual special effects. So I can appreciate that in this film. That Elemental was more impressive for those reasons though. But I think there's representation of real human moments and emotional sort of like episodes that people go through. I think that's fascinating that they are able to represent them. But the biggest takeaway for me overall was as the story pushes more and more into her emotions trying to control her, trying to wrestle control between themselves of controlling Riley and like protecting her ultimately. It brings the big question of like what is Riley's consciousness in this world, like because her emotions are her, but they feel like almost separate beings in a way, but they're not separate beings. So I was talking to Austin about this a little bit earlier, but I was just saying I think that the boundaries of the personification of emotions and the like mental non-material world like of our brains finds creates some like cracks and holes in the actual representation, because I came to find like more questions in like, yeah, where is Riley's consciousness, like what is her own volition, like if it's not her emotions, and she's not just the control board they interact with. Yeah, I think it's kind of starting to become problematic for me that the simplification necessary simplification of representing emotions as characters is leading to some deeper, maybe like philosophical questions on how this like world works. So I think like the like framework of the actual world is kind of like crumbling in a way as they continue to add more elements to the story. Uh, that's just me personally. And I think the movie at one point by the end kind of has like this sort of like particles trail coming from one of the emotions to the control board of what controls Riley. And they say that like Riley is like calling upon that emotion. And so the emotion kind of has a decision to go to the control board or not. And she ultimately does go to the control board. So I think it's fascinating that they're like maybe they're representing the character's growing consciousness upon of wanting to have certain emotions. But yeah, it's just it's a bit of a weird it's yeah, it's a bit of a weird representation. While I do appreciate that, like I can see Riley as more of an individual, like yeah. Anyways, it's hard to explain, but I'm just trying to say it's a bizarre. Yeah, as they continue this story along, drawing the lines between her characters and herself is getting too blurry and confusing for me ultimately. But
Mm.
I think that in I think that children's stories should try and tackle these types of topics, whether it's our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings. And I think they have in a lot of different media over the years, and I think it should continue to happen. Um, but if you try and make the story too deep or try and like continue the storyline on too long, you may wind up running into some challenging story or plot points that need to be explained that maybe parents could or explain, or people in
Yeah, it almost sounds
conversation.
like it stops being a kids movie at a certain point, you know? Like it
Yeah, I
stops
mean
being a
it's
Pixar movie.
the first one. They both feel similar, but this one definitely is representing someone going through puberty. But I think as they continue moving along, then yeah, it becomes like a philosophical challenge to actually represent what's happening in someone's mind accurately in a simplified way. You know, yeah.
Mm.
So I actually
Okay,
like that these
question.
movies exist. I definitely do like that these movies exist.
Okay, question. Is the father an idiot? Is he like a hapless dolt? Is he just like is he just like the butt of the joke? Because it kind of like from
um
what I saw in the trailer from the first movie, it definitely seemed like that. He's just clueless, doesn't understand his child, just kind of hapless and dumb.
yeah, I mean, look, if they so he very much him. and his wife very much care for Riley. They definitely have different approaches to how they're living life and raising a kid. So yeah, we will see that the mom is kind of like mastermind, not mastermind the whole thing, but she has much more of an understanding of like what's going on than the father will. The father more or less kind of winds up being, he's concerned at different moments, but like the second that that concern can be like waved away, he's back to thinking about sports, you know. So
Okay.
yeah.
So like is this like the folks at Pixar be like, I'm mad at my dad because he didn't spend time with me, so this is how I'm going to portray him in this movie. Is it that kind of thing, or is it just
No,
like they just don't know how to write like paternal characters with any kind of depth or dimension?
so with the parents, they're both there for showing that she is very much loved and they're present in her life. But most of the time when they cut to the parents, like they actually cut to inside the parents' mind, like their versions of the emotions. For both the parents, they play them for comedy overall. Um,
Oh,
yeah, it's really like it's really just us following Riley's emotions, and that's where all the most serious story elements wind up happening.
got it. Okay,
Yeah.
just curious about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I do remember something about that in the trailer of the first movie, and to me it was like, I mean, I wasn't particularly interested in subject matter to begin with, but then it was like, oh, we're doing the dumb dad trope again. Like, oh, well, if I wanted to be funny, I can watch old episodes of The Simpsons or
Mm.
Family Guy, and if I wanted to be competent, I can watch old episodes of Leave It to Beaver. You know what I mean? If I
Yeah.
want something different, but it's just like, oh, he's a man, he's dumb. Not to like get into the whole like, not to like rail against that, but like just in terms of like lazy storytelling and like uninspired, unoriginal storytelling from that perspective.
Yeah.
Like, does the movie fall into that pitfall?
No, I think they're not really trying to, the movie's not trying to represent the parents in a deeply nuanced way.
Okay.
It's just really, yeah, playing them for comedy, but then also showing that she does have caring parents that are loving to her and are wanting to know, wanting to be active in her life. Overall, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious about that. Um, it's like the only thing I was curious about in this movie. So, no. Um,
Yeah, maybe
uh,
one day we'll get a movie from the perspective of somebody, of one of the parents, and instead of Riley. But I doubt they would go in that direction because we've been with Riley the first movie, the second movie. If they did a third movie, sure they would want to probably continue with her. But
got it.
it would be taking a significant chance. I think it could be refreshing if they did make one of the parents the main character in a third film. But
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Any other thoughts? I don't have anything to add. I just had to. That was like my only question.
Yeah, no, no, that's totally fine. I know this is
Oh,
bizarre
so
format.
you did say that like the CG animation has improved since the first movie, right?
Yeah, no, it certainly has. So, but it's difficult for me without seeing them side by side to say in what specific ways.
Okay,
Besides like
that's
character models are nicer, look a little bit nicer looking, but they were already
uh-huh.
getting away with it looking good because of the artistic choices, that they had in the first movie. So it's like looking at the film, it looks the way you would expect it to look, but it doesn't look like going from a N64 to a GameCube or something like that, and you're like, oh my gosh,
Right.
it's like triple the level of
I was
polygons.
Yeah, I was thinking it was more akin to like the Incredibles movies, right? Like the second Incredibles
Yeah.
movies, while I think the story was weaker,
Mm-hmm.
um the visuals were quite impressive. And
Yeah.
I think in some ways there was a step up, and they
Yeah.
tried to do more things creatively, particularly with the baby.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
Kind of a weak point in terms of the story, but in terms of like the visual effects, very impressive, very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah,
And
this
so,
movie maybe doesn't lend itself necessarily to like truly showing off how impressive there's a big storm moment that happens, and whenever they have like particle effects and special effects, sure, those are things that you can look at by comparison, but just most of what you wind up seeing is like specific character design in the first movie. That character design still holds up, or environmental design still holds up for the second movie. So when you're looking for advancements, you're really looking for like the details of lighting and shadow and special effects and yeah, just things that are maybe less like easy to spot.
less apparent, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's destruction. Yeah, I'm sure if you compared destruction between the two movies, there'd be way more destructibility, destructive like environments, and but they already, like, for instance, they
Yeah,
already designed like the emotions when they're in their sphere form are like a sphere with clouds of color and stuff inside them. Like when you go from that to a sphere with clouds of color inside them, like it already looked great in the first movie, that it looks great in the next one, that I'm sure if you had them side by side, you could point out like the reflections are better, like the luminance is
yeah.
better, like yeah.
It's like a AAA game that was released, and then they re-release it with ray tracing or path tracing, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
akin to something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sure for some people, if they're, yeah, really good at spotting details, they really have a good understanding. They've seen the first one a million times. They're like, wow, they could say lighting, shadow, special effects, just destructible environment. Like they probably could list off a number of things that have gotten better. But it's like it's almost, for me, it's almost like comparing like a drawing of Mickey, in 1980, to a drawing of Mickey nowadays. Besides there being like an obvious character design difference, like that drawing of Mickey could look exactly the same in the two areas. If you're trying to design the character in the same way, draw the character in the same way, like yeah, maybe you can see that the ink is a little bit is nicer, more consistent potentially, like in the new one, or the color, but I mean, yeah, it might look be just like very negligible in the differences between. But the storm, yeah,
Yeah.
the storm represented, and some of the lighting strands and all that stuff, that probably is some of the most obvious things different. But
Okay.
yeah,
Cool. All right. Any other closing observations or recommendations? Yeah. What was like? Do you recommend this movie?
I think if you wind up liking the first movie, you should definitely check this one out. Know that, for my opinion, it kind of is like a rehashing in some ways, but it presents enough new material that it's entertaining to watch. Um, and I was curious to see where it would go. I think they represented the next chapter in her emotional development pretty well. But it's kind of one of those, if you want more of the same, or like 80% of the same, and you're happy with that, yeah, give it a give it a good shot. Give it a go.
Okay. All right.
Hmm.
Well, I guess that's the long and the short of it.
Yeah,
Um,
I know, right?
this has been
Probably more so the
Josiah's
long.
review of, is it Inside Out Part Deux?
Pas
Part
dit?
Deux.
Dit?
Um, like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so that you can be notified on all of our either movie reviews. It feels like people aren't watching movies that much anymore, and so we might transition to like anime or Netflix shows or something. People are watching. Um, some of the movies that we've been reviewing recently, like we just did Furiosa and we did The Fall Guy. Apparently, they totally bombed in the box office. Like they just crashed and burned.
Mhm.
And so
Sorry.
that means
We
that
did
people
we did
aren't
it
going
to
to
him.
see them. Yeah, they crashed and burned before we reviewed them, so we take zero accountability or responsibility
Mhm,
for
mhm.
their box office performance.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, I mean, let us know in the comments if you see this, what types of things you would like us to review, and we may do it, we may not, but it would be great to know what people are thinking. So
Yeah.
that aside, thank you for those of you who see this and watch
Yeah.
it. Um, yeah, I'm Austin.
I'm Josiah.
We are the Super Cinema Bros, and until next time, God bless and peace.
God bless y'all. See ya.